Greetings, man of Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. Have you ever looked at something and thought, that just doesn't quite fit? Could be a person, a piece of art, or even a situation. That nagging sense that what's in front of you is slightly off, like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong place. That's what world-renowned art critic Robert Cumming thought as he stood in the halls of London's National Gallery, studying an Italian Renaissance piece painted by Filippino Lippi. On the surface, it was a masterpiece. Mary cradling the infant Jesus in her arms, while saints looked on in devotion. Brushwork shimmering like light across water. And yet, something was off. The hills in the background were pitched too steeply, as if they might tumble right out of the frame. The saints appeared stiff and awkward. And even Mary's eyes seemed to be distracted, looking beyond the viewer. For centuries, critics equal to Cumming all agreed, beautiful but flawed. When I first heard that story, a thought occurred to me. Isn't that just the way I am sometimes? Not in critiquing masterpieces, but in critiquing others in the gallery of my own life. My painting's name was Carl. And the first time I met him, I thought a potato farmer had wandered into the IT department. He just didn't fit. He didn't seem to have any drive, any purpose in his life at all. And I carried that perspective for quite some time. Until one day, Carl and I had to work together on a project. And I can't tell you why, but he decided to open up to me like we are a couple of blood brothers. And his words were like brushstrokes, revealing a much different picture than I thought I'd been looking at all along. The man I had so easily dismissed was, in fact, a very savvy investor. I also learned that Carl, the IT guy, is a master carpenter. Now that is hilarious. But there was one story that turned my perspective of Carl upside down on its head. Carl's aunt is disabled. She had to have a leg amputated. And she was really struggling in her living situation. And Carl, the more he thought about this, the more indignant he got. Like, shouldn't somebody do something about this? And so he did. He decided that what she needed most was to live close to family. His mom, Carl, the siblings, be surrounded with family that loved her, that would be willing to help her with her day-to-day needs. Then he took action. He went out and bought an empty lot in his hometown, put a basement in it, bought a house that had been moved, popped that on top of the basement, and then he commenced to remodel the entire house from top to bottom, board by board, room by room, all with her disability in mind, until it was all but a new house. And then he handed her the keys. And when she walked through that house for the first time, she wasn't in a new house, she was stepping into a new life. One made whole again, one with dignity, all because one man refused to let her struggle alone. And not only did he do all the work himself, he paid for the entire project out of his own pocket. The man that I had silently disparaged was in fact extraordinary in many ways. And the only thing wrong with this picture was me and my perspective. And this leads us back to Cumming in the gallery. He too wondered, what if there's nothing wrong with the painting? What if it's just my perspective? So right there in London's National Gallery, he dropped to his knees. And when he looked back up at the masterpiece, everything about it changed. The hills settled into harmony. The saints became loving and endearing. And Mary's eyes suddenly met his with warmth, as if she'd been waiting for him all along. In that moment, Cumming realized that masterpiece was never intended to be in a gallery. it was most certainly commissioned for a prayer chapel where people in humility, on their knees in prayer, could look up at it for inspiration. That masterpiece had been waiting for centuries for somebody to see it as the artist intended. Carl, the painting, different stories, same truth. What we often think just doesn't quite fit is beauty waiting to be seen rightly. And the only way to see a masterpiece rightly is intimately. You need to step up close, linger, study the brushstrokes, the textures, find the story within. And really, people aren't any different. You need to get close enough to hear their story, to ask, to connect with them. And only then does their value, their beauty, reveal itself to you. And when it does, you realize this treasure, this masterpiece, has been here all along, just waiting for somebody to see them rightly. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guest, not every masterpiece hangs in a gallery or gilded frame. Some walk among us, behind plain clothes, mild manners, and even quirky conversations. So here's my challenge to you today. Find your Carl, the misunderstood. Esteem them, lift them up, engage them so the world can know the treasure and masterpiece they truly are. Madam Toastmaster.